The moment she slid that handwritten list across our kitchen table, I knew our 5-year marriage was in serious trouble. Phone privacy rules. I read aloud, not bothering to hide my disbelief. There were 12 numbered items, each more ridiculous than the last. What had started as subtle changes in her behavior had escalated to this absurd manifesto sitting between us like a ticking bomb. It began 3 weeks earlier. Small things at first, her suddenly turning away when texting, the new phone password I wasn't privy to, and how she'd abruptly end calls when I entered the room. The woman who once would absent-mindedly leave her phone anywhere in our house now treated it like classified government property. "These are non-negotiable," she stated firmly, tapping her French manicured nail on the paper. "I need my personal space respected." The rules range from never ask to see my phone, to don't question who I'm texting, and even don't touch my phone even if it's ringing and I'm in another room. The final rule hit like a slap. Violation of these boundaries will be considered a breach of trust in our marriage. I took a slow sip of my coffee, studying her face. The woman across from me looked like my wife. Same blonde hair, same green eyes, but something had changed. The warmth that once radiated between us had been replaced by cold suspicion. In 5 years of marriage, we'd shared everything. Passwords, accounts, and complete access to each other's devices. Not because we were controlling, but because we had nothing to hide. "So let me get this straight," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the anger building inside me. "You suddenly need a comprehensive privacy policy for your phone, but I'm supposed to keep my life an open book?" Something flashed across her face. Guilt, perhaps, or irritation at being questioned. "Everyone deserves privacy," she countered defensively. "My therapist says healthy boundaries are important in relationships." "Interesting timing for this revelation," I remarked. "Does your therapist know you've never needed these boundaries for the past 5 years? I made air quotes, not caring that it visibly annoyed her. She sighed dramatically, already framing me as unreasonable. "This isn't about you. I'm just establishing healthy patterns for myself." I nodded slowly, deciding to play along temporarily. The businessman in me recognized a negotiation tactic when I saw one. "And what about my phone? Should I draft my own list of privacy rules too?" The question caught her off guard. "If you wanna," she said quickly, too quickly. "But you've never seemed to care about privacy before." "Neither did you," I replied pointedly. "Until recently." The tension between us was palpable as she gathered her designer purse, conveniently checking the time. "I'm late for brunch with the girls. We can discuss this later." She didn't meet my eyes as she headed for the door. After she left, I reread the ridiculous list. Rule number 7 particularly stood out. Never check my location or question my whereabouts. For a woman who used to text me her location out of habit whenever she arrived somewhere, this new boundary reeked of deception. I pulled out my own phone, scrolling through our recent text history. The loving messages had grown sparse, replaced by practical communication about groceries and bills. The last "I love you" text had come from me 3 days ago. Hers had been over a week ago. My instincts were screaming that something was deeply wrong. Not just wrong, calculated. These weren't the actions of someone seeking healthy boundaries. These were the classic moves of someone hiding something significant. As I placed the list in my desk drawer, a calm determination washed over me. If she wanted to play games with privacy rules, I could play too. But my version would have very different outcomes. I wouldn't confront her yet, not until I knew exactly what I was dealing with. One thing was certain. Whatever she was hiding behind those 12 rules would soon come to light. And when it did, she'd learn that some things can't remain private forever. That night, I couldn't sleep. The list of phone rules lay in my desk drawer, but its implications weighed heavily on my mind. Instead of confronting her directly, I decided to observe. If she was hiding something, patience would reveal it faster than accusations. The next morning, she acted as if nothing had changed. She kissed me goodbye as I left for work, that familiar vanilla scent of her perfume momentarily making me question my suspicions. But her phone remained clutched in her hand, screen angled away from me, a silent reinforcement of her new boundaries. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a detective in my own home. The changes were subtle but unmistakable. 3 new dresses appeared in her closet. Not unusual, except she'd claimed we needed to budget this month. Her gym visits suddenly extended from 1 hour to nearly 3. Twice she mentioned team dinners that kept her out until almost midnight. something that hadn't happened in the 5 years she'd worked at her marketing firm. "How was the team dinner?" I asked casually after the second late night, as she slipped into bed beside me, still smelling of wine and unfamiliar cologne. "Exhausting," she sighed dramatically. "The new client is so demanding. We had to rework the entire presentation." I nodded in the darkness. "Sounds stressful. Anyone I know there?" "Just the usual team," she replied too quickly. "You'd be bored with all the shop talk." The next day, I called my old college friend who worked at the same firm. "Just checking if you're free for lunch," I said casually after catching up. "How's the new client treating everyone?" My wife mentioned the team's been working late. His confusion was palpable even through the phone. "What new client?" "We actually lost 2 accounts last month. Things have been pretty quiet lately." I thanked him and hung up, the final piece of evidence falling into place. That evening, I watched her getting dressed with extra care for what she claimed was a casual work event. Designer jeans I'd never seen before. A new silk blouse that accentuated her figure. Heavier makeup than usual. "Nice outfit for a casual event," I remarked from the doorway of our bedroom. She flinched slightly, not having heard me approach. "Oh, you know how it is. Clients expect us to look presentable." I leaned against the doorframe, maintaining my composure. "Which client is it again?" "The fitness supplement company," she answered, focusing intensely on applying her lipstick. "I told you about them last week." She hadn't. As she gathered her things, her phone lit up on the vanity. Even from where I stood, I could see the message preview. "Can't wait to see you. Same room as last time." She snatched the phone up, but it was too late. Our eyes met in the mirror, and for a brief moment, panic flashed across her face. "Work emergency?" I asked, my tone deliberately neutral. "Just confirming details for tonight," she muttered, dropping the phone into her purse and snapping it shut. "Don't wait up. This might run late." After she left, I sat in our living room, surprisingly calm despite the storm raging inside me. I had 2 choices: confront her with what little I knew and watch her construct elaborate lies, or gather irrefutable evidence that would leave no room for manipulation. The businessman in me chose strategy over emotion. I needed facts, not suspicions. The next morning, I made a call to a private investigator, a former client who owed me a favor. For the first time since finding that list of phone rules, I felt a sense of control returning. If she wanted secrets, I'd uncover them all. 2 days later, I sat in my car outside my office, staring at the envelope the investigator had just handed me. "It's all there," he said grimly. "Times, locations, photos. Dating back almost 2 months. "I'm sorry, man." I nodded, thanking him for his efficiency. Alone in my car, I opened the envelope. The photos showed exactly what I expected: my wife entering a hotel with another man, laughing over intimate dinners, holding hands across tables at restaurants we could barely afford. The final photo showed them kissing in his car, parked just 2 blocks from our house. Something cold and resolute settled in my chest. The hurt was there, but overshadowed by clarity and determination. This wasn't about phone privacy. This was about creating rules to facilitate betrayal. As I drove home, a plan began forming in my mind. She wanted privacy? I'd give her more than she bargained for. Much more. The photos stayed locked in my office safe. I needed time to think, to plan. Unlike the movies, I didn't throw them on the dinner table or confront her in a rage. That's what she would expect, emotion overriding reason. I was determined to maintain control of this situation from start to finish. For 3 days, I maintained a perfect facade. I smiled over breakfast, discussed mundane topics at dinner, and pretended not to notice when she slipped away to take calls in the bathroom. Each lie she told was another brick in the wall I was building between us. A wall she wouldn't see until it was too late. My first move was financial. Early Monday morning, I met with my attorney, a sharp-minded woman who listened without judgment as I laid out what I'd discovered. "Classic case," she sighed, reviewing the photos. "You were smart not to confront her immediately. Most clients come in after they've already had the blowout fight, which complicates things." "I'm not interested in drama," I told her. "I want a clean break with minimal losses." She nodded approvingly. "Let's protect your assets first. How are your finances structured?" Our joint accounts contained most of our savings, money I'd primarily earned while supporting her through her career changes. By afternoon, I had opened separate accounts and transferred half of our joint funds, legally the maximum I could move without prior agreement. I left her portion untouched. Let no one say I wasn't fair, even in betrayal. Next came property. Our house was mostly paid for with my inheritance, a fact documented in our prenuptial agreement. The prenup she'd initially balked at signing, calling it unromantic, now stood as my financial fortress. My attorney reviewed the document, nodding with satisfaction. This is solid. Given the infidelity and documentation, you're in a strong position. I authorized her to begin drafting divorce papers. Not to file yet. Timing would be everything. That evening, my wife announced another work event scheduled for the weekend. Actually, it's a full weekend retreat, she explained, not quite meeting my eyes. Team building in wine country. I meant to tell you sooner. No problem, I replied calmly, turning a page in my book. Anything for career advancement. Relief washed over her face at my easy acceptance. She had no idea she'd just given me the perfect opportunity to complete my preparations. As soon as she left Friday morning, I put the next phase of my plan into motion. I hired a locksmith to change the codes on our home security system and replace the locks. Not to lock her out permanently, that would be illegal, but to control the moment of confrontation. Next, I systematically went through our home, collecting important documents and sentimental items that were undisputedly mine. Family photos, my grandparents' wedding rings, personal correspondence, anything I couldn't bear to lose in a potential retaliatory rage. These joined the financial documents in a secure storage unit I'd rented. Saturday morning, I met with a digital security expert. Within hours, all my passwords were changed, two-factor authentication was added to every account, and my devices were scrubbed of any tracking software. The irony of implementing my own privacy measures wasn't lost on me. Her phone rules had been designed to create an information imbalance. She could maintain access to my life while building walls around hers. I was simply leveling the playing field. The divorce papers arrived by courier that afternoon, comprehensive, airtight, and heavily favoring my position given the documented infidelity. I reviewed them carefully, then placed them in a manila envelope on the dining table where her list of phone rules had once sat. By Sunday afternoon, everything was in place. I sat in our living room, surprisingly calm as I awaited her return. The chess pieces were positioned. The strategy set. All that remained was to execute the final move. When headlights swept across the driveway around 7 p.m., I took a deep breath. The woman who walked through that door thought she was returning to her carefully constructed web of lies. Instead, she was walking into the consequences of her choices. I heard her key in the lock, followed by confusion when it didn't work. Then came the doorbell. I stood, straightened my shirt, and moved toward the door with purpose. The time for pretending was over. I opened the door to find her looking windswept and slightly sunburned, not the typical aftermath of a corporate retreat. Her expression shifted from confusion to wariness when she saw my calm demeanor. "The lock's been changed," she stated the obvious, an accusatory edge in her voice. "Yes," I replied simply, stepping aside to let her in. "We need to talk." Her eyes darted around the living room, likely noticing the missing photographs and personal items. The air between us crackled with tension as she placed her weekend bag by the stairs. "What's going on?" she demanded, maintaining that indignant tone that had once made me second-guess myself. "Not anymore. I think you know," I responded evenly. "But first, how was wine country? Did your team accomplish their building goals?" She blinked rapidly, buying seconds to construct her lie. "It was productive. Exhausting, really. We had workshops all day and—" "Interesting." I cut her off, considering your marketing firm had no retreats scheduled this weekend. In fact, they've been downsizing teams, not building them. Color drained from her face, but she recovered quickly. "It was last minute. Only select team members." "Stop lying," I said quietly. "It's insulting to both of us at this point." Her strategy shifted instantly, eyes narrowing as she crossed her arms defensively. "Have you been checking up on me? Invading my privacy? After I specifically told you how important boundaries are to me." The audacity was almost impressive. I laughed softly, without humor. "Ah yes, the famous 12 rules. Your privacy manifesto." I walked to the dining table and tapped the manila envelope waiting there. "Consider this my response." She approached cautiously, as if the envelope might bite. When she opened it and saw the divorce papers inside, her composure cracked. For a moment, genuine shock registered on her face. "You can't be serious," she whispered, flipping through the pages. When she reached the section detailing her infidelity, complete with dates and locations, her hands began to tremble. You hired someone to follow me? How could you? Interesting that you're more outraged about being caught than about betraying our marriage, I observed. And to answer your question, easily. The moment you handed me that list of phone rules, you might as well have confessed. She sank into a dining chair, document clutched in her shaking hands. The calculated seductress from moments ago had vanished, replaced by someone desperately recalculating her position. It's not what you think, she began, tears welling in her eyes right on cue. I made a mistake. Yes, but it didn't mean anything. He didn't mean anything. Save the performance, I interrupted. This isn't a negotiation. It's a notification. We can work through this, she insisted, voice breaking perfectly. Couples survive affairs all the time. We could try counseling. I'll do anything. Like you did last month when I suggested counseling for our communication issues. What was it you said then? We don't need strangers in our business. Now I understand why. She stood abruptly, anger replacing her manufactured tears. You can't just throw away 5 years of marriage. I didn't, I replied calmly. You did. Over and over. Every time you lied to my face. Every time you created a rule to facilitate your betrayal. Every time you prioritized your affair over our marriage. She changed tactics again, moving toward me with softened eyes, reaching for my hand. Baby, please. I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry. But what we have is worth fighting for. Give me another chance to prove how much I love you. I stepped back, maintaining distance. The divorce papers are straightforward. The prenup holds. You get what you came into the marriage with, plus half our joint savings. I keep the house, as stipulated in the agreement you signed. The house. Her voice rose an octave. You can't expect me to just leave my home. It's interesting which part of this situation you find most upsetting, I noted. Not the end of our relationship, but your living arrangements. She paced the room, all pretense of contrition abandoned. You've clearly been planning this ambush for weeks. How coldly calculating. This isn't the behavior of someone who ever loved me. On the contrary, I corrected her. This is the behavior of someone who respected himself enough not to accept betrayal. You created a privacy policy for your phone. I created a privacy policy for my future. As the reality of her situation sank in, desperation crept into her voice. What am I supposed to do now? Where am I supposed to go? I imagine the man you spent the weekend with might have suggestions. I replied, checking my watch. You have until tomorrow evening to pack your personal belongings. I'll be staying elsewhere tonight to give you space. You're just leaving me here? Tonight. Consider it one final courtesy. I picked up my overnight bag from behind the couch. Oh, and you should know, I've changed all our passwords. Banking, streaming services, everything. Consider it my own list of privacy rules. Her face contorted with fury. You'll regret this. When the anger fades, you'll realize what you've thrown away. I paused at the door, looking back at the stranger who had been my wife. That's where you're wrong. Some decisions don't come from anger. They come from clarity. As I walked to my car, a weight lifted from my shoulders. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight, for the first time in months, I would sleep with a clear conscience and a definitive plan for my future, a future that no longer included her. I spent the night at a high-end hotel downtown, treating myself to room service and the first peaceful sleep I'd had in weeks. The next morning, I silenced my phone after the 15th missed call from her. Whatever emotional manipulation she had planned could wait. Today belonged to me. After a leisurely breakfast, I met with my attorney to update her on the situation. She'll try to fight the prenup, I explained. Her reaction made that clear. Let her try, my attorney responded confidently. The infidelity documentation strengthens our position considerably. But be prepared. The most manipulative tactics often come after the initial shock wears off. How right she was. By afternoon, the missed calls were replaced by messages from mutual friends. She's really broken up about everything, one texted. She says there's been a huge misunderstanding. Another called to tell me she was worried about her mental state. Classic triangulation, using others to make her emotional state my responsibility. I returned to the house precisely at the time I'd specified, finding her sitting on the sofa, eyes strategically puffy from crying. Several packed suitcases stood by the door. A calculated visual. She'd made an effort to appear cooperative while setting the stage for her performance. You came back, she said softly, as if this were some romantic reconciliation rather than the execution of divorce proceedings. As agreed, I replied, placing my keys on the entry table. Are you finished packing? She nodded, then launched into her prepared speech. I've had a lot of time to think. What I did was unforgivable, but it came from a place of feeling disconnected from you. We both contributed to the breakdown of our marriage. I raised an eyebrow. Interesting perspective. And did we both contribute to you creating elaborate lies? Did we both write your list of phone privacy rules? Did we both decide you should sleep with someone else? That's not fair, she protested. Relationships are complex. You were so focused on work, always busy. He made me feel seen. I wasn't too busy to suggest counseling 3 months ago, I reminded her, or to plan our anniversary trip that you canceled due to a work emergency, which I now realize was just another opportunity to be with him. She stood, crossing over to me with determined steps. People make mistakes, terrible ones, but throwing away a 5-year marriage without even trying to fix it is giving up. The man I married wasn't a quitter. The woman I married wasn't a cheater, I countered. Yet here we are. She placed her hand on my arm, her voice dropping to a whisper. One conversation won't erase what happened, but we owe ourselves more than this cold, business-like ending. Let's at least talk, really talk, before finalizing anything. For a brief moment, the familiarity of her touch sparked an echo of what we'd once shared. But it was just that, an echo of something no longer real. I gently removed her hand. Time for talking was before you created a double life, I said. Not after you got caught. Her expression hardened. So that's it. You're just throwing me away. I'm respecting your choice to step outside our marriage and simply acknowledging what that means. You chose him. I'm choosing myself. She laughed bitterly. God, listen to you. So righteous. So perfect. You know what? Maybe I did make a mistake, but at least he knows how to put someone else first. When was the last time you did that for me? When I left last night, instead of making you find a hotel, I responded evenly. When I agreed to split our savings equally despite your betrayal. When I didn't expose your affair to everyone we know, despite having every right to. She crossed her arms defensively. And you want credit for basic decency? No. I want you to recognize that even now, I'm treating you with more respect than you showed me. The statement hung between us, undeniable. Her next words carried a threatening edge. You realize this gets ugly now, right? I'll fight the prenup. I'll tell everyone you were emotionally unavailable. Cold. Controlling. I'd anticipated this exact reaction. Without responding, I took out my phone and pulled up a draft social media post, showing her the screen. It contained a simple, dignified announcement of our separation due to infidelity, with no vindictive details but a clear statement of facts. You can certainly try that approach, I said calmly. But consider what a public battle would mean. I have documentation, witnesses, time-stamped evidence. Is that really the story you want shared with our friends, families, and colleagues? The color drained from her face. You wouldn't. I'd prefer not to, I replied honestly. But I won't allow you to rewrite history. Your privacy ends where my reputation begins. We stood in tense silence before she finally nodded, defeated. Fine. I'll sign the papers. Uncontested. As she collected her bags, a bittersweet realization washed over me. The woman I'd built a life with, shared dreams with, had never truly existed. Or perhaps she had. But somewhere along the way, she'd chosen to become someone else. Someone who believed that rules only applied to others, not to herself. She paused at the door, turning back with one final attempt. For what it's worth, I did love you. Still do in my way. I met her gaze steadily. If that's true, it's the saddest part of all this. Goodbye. As the door closed behind her, I didn't feel the triumph I'd expected. Instead, I felt something more valuable. Freedom. Freedom from lies. Freedom from manipulation. Freedom to reclaim my life on my own terms. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and opened my laptop. It was time to update my status, in more ways than one. 6 weeks later, I sat on my back deck, laptop open, finalizing the last details of my new life. The divorce had been processed with surprising efficiency. Amazing how quickly things move when both parties sign without contesting. Her attempts to renegotiate had fallen flat against the solid wall of documentation and the ironclad prenup she'd signed. The evening I'd posted my relationship status change to privately divorced had created exactly the controlled narrative I'd wanted. No messy details, no public mudslinging, just a clear statement that left no room for misinterpretation. The cryptic yet pointed wording generated exactly the right amount of supportive messages without inviting drama. Her own announcement came days later, a vague post about new beginnings and mutual decisions that rang hollow to anyone who knew the truth. The calculated ambiguity only highlighted her inability to take responsibility, even at the end. What surprised me most wasn't the relief of ending a fraudulent marriage. It was discovering how many aspects of my life I'd compromised without realizing it. Friends I distanced myself from because she found them problematic. Career opportunities I declined because they didn't align with her vision of our life. Even small preferences, restaurants I enjoyed, music I listened to, hobbies I'd once loved, had gradually been sacrificed on the altar of her approval. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was my attorney. "Just confirming our appointment tomorrow to finalize the property transfer," she said. "Everything's in order. The house is officially yours alone as of tomorrow afternoon." "Thank you," I replied, feeling a sense of closure approaching. "I appreciate your efficiency. It's rare to see such a clean resolution in these cases," she commented. "Your preparation made all the difference." After hanging up, I checked my email to find a message from her that had bypassed my filters. The subject line read simply, "We should talk." I considered deleting it unread, but curiosity won out. The message was brief. "I made mistakes that cost us everything. He's already shown his true colors. It was never about me, just the thrill of taking something that wasn't his. I realize now what I threw away. Can we meet? Just to talk. No expectations." I closed the email without responding. 6 weeks ago, those words might have cracked my resolve. Now they only confirmed I'd made the right decision. Her regrets weren't about losing me. They were about losing the security and stability I'd provided while getting nothing comparable in return. My doorbell rang unexpectedly. Through the security camera, I saw a delivery driver with a large package. I signed for it, puzzled since I wasn't expecting anything. Inside was an expensive bottle of scotch with a note from my oldest friend. "To new beginnings and reclaimed freedom. Dinner next Saturday? The guys miss you." I smiled, genuinely touched. Throughout this ordeal, I discovered who my real friends were. The ones who stood by me without judgment, who didn't take sides or pressure me to work things out, when working things out meant accepting betrayal. That evening, I hosted a small gathering, just a few close friends who'd been there through the darkest moments. We grilled steaks on the deck, opened good wine, and shared stories late into the night. For the first time in months, laughter came easily. "A toast," said my best friend, raising his glass. "To privacy settings that actually work." Everyone laughed, clinking glasses. The inside joke perfectly captured the irony of my situation. How her obsessive phone privacy had ultimately led to my own private liberation. Later, after everyone had left, I received a text from a woman I'd met at a recent industry event. Smart, direct, with a warmth that seemed genuine. We'd connected over shared interests and exchanged numbers with no pressure or expectations. "Enjoyed our conversation yesterday," her message read. "If you're free next week, there's a jazz concert downtown I think you'd appreciate." I found myself smiling as I typed my response. "I'd like that. And I'm an open book. No privacy rules required." As I readied for bed, I noticed my ex-wife's contact photo was still in my phone, the last digital remnant of our life together. I deleted it without hesitation, then blocked her number and email address. The last thread cut. The 12 privacy rules that had been her shield for deception had inadvertently given me the greatest clarity I'd ever experienced. In trying to create walls around her secret life, she'd freed me to build something authentic. The divorce hadn't been about revenge or punishment. It had been about reclaiming my self-respect and refusing to accept less than I deserved. About recognizing that sometimes the healthiest response to betrayal isn't fighting to save what's broken, but having the courage to start again. As I drifted off to sleep in the quiet house that was now truly mine, I felt no regret, no lingering attachment to what might have been. Just a profound gratitude for the lesson I'd learned. True privacy isn't about hiding who you are from those closest to you. It's about being authentic enough that you have nothing to hide. My relationship status might read privately divorced, but for the first time in years, I was living with complete transparency. And that made all the difference.
Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.